Alright everyone, hello, and today we're going to talk about a bit of a wild card subject, and namely that is the consolidation of some of the labels we find in Kitchen Witchcraft. By the way, if you want to see these videos 2 weeks earlier, consider subscribing to my Patreon, where you not only get all these videos, but also recipe cards, specific deity profiles, and lots of other interesting things to look at. Video tiers start at $10 a month, so definitely consider checking it out. Alright, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is this. A lot of times when you see witches engaging in any kind of self-identification, you'll find a string of labels, right? Some people might be techno witches, some people might be sea witches, hedge witches, Christian gemstone witches, pagan pyromancers, all these different kinds of titles that are descriptive if you know what they mean, but are also in a way kind of limiting if you think about it. And given that we're all here working as kitchen witches, what I want to talk about is how some of these labels can actually kind of intersect a little bit, like with hearth witchery, green witchery, and of course in the middle, kitchen witchery. And when we take a look at this Venn diagram here, you can actually see very clearly where these things overlap. But let's talk about each one specifically before we get into how these create the term kitchen witch. So actually one author of note on this topic is Erin Murphy Hiscock. She has a book, The House Witch, and with it actually comes another book called The Green Witch, right? So she's got those two in like a box set side by side, and this kind of, in a very consumerist fashion to me, represents that divide people think is between them. However, let's talk about house witchery for a minute because it does have some specifics. Specifically in this book, Erin Murphy Hiscock, she makes a point that hearth witchery doesn't just mean like hearth in like the sense of an oven or a stove, right? Like when we think of kitchen witchery, hearth witchery refers to the whole house. So how you keep it clean, how you organize your space, how you decorate your space, how you cleanse your spaces, what rooms do different things. She also makes a point to mention that the heart of a house, like the center, energetic center of a house, isn't necessarily the kitchen. Back in the day when people didn't have that many rooms, right, of course it might be related to a kitchen, and that they had the hearth fire going and keeping everybody warm, but these days the heart of a house can be anywhere, including say in your living room, or if you spend a lot of time in your bedroom, maybe there, it can be in different rooms. And so as you notice, I mentioned that sacred flame, and that's because in hearth witchery, it used to be very focused, especially back in the day, on that flame, right? Not only did you cook with it at the hearth, but you also kept the house warm with it, and you wanted to keep it alive. If a hearth fire went out back in the day, it was very difficult to relight, and that's why you'll see those people kind of keeping little embers alive throughout the night, just barely burning, so that when you put fresh wood on top of it, that ember, that little coal, will light up the fire and it'll be easy to start again. If you don't have that ember or that coal to burn, it is very difficult to restart it, and that's why it was such an important feature of the house. It's also why we get certain goddesses like Vesta and like Bridget, right? Who are centered around this idea of sacred flame and domestic hearth fire. That fire is pretty much the life of the house. It's what keeps people fed, it's what keeps them from freezing in winter, it's what, you know, kind of centers people as well, because usually, again, as I said, it was in a communal spot. It's where everyone came together. So at its most basic, you can say hearth witchery is quite literally all of that domesticity, especially if we look at the Venn diagram again. A lot of it is about keeping the family safe, keeping everyone healthy, and there are some specifics, right? Like those certain gods I mentioned, there are certain spirits that are more inclined to domesticity and that home role and that home space. But as you can see, it's very distinct, and it can also invite spirits like house spirits, say like these Slavic domovik. You also have, you know, the brownie or other such spirits that help clean and take care of the house. You have the house itself even. A lot of people have a more animist perspective towards their house, in that there is some kind of spirit embodied in the frame of the house that you can build a relationship with, and you can have that kind of animist sense with the very walls and structure of the house. It's also really important to remember that a lot of cultures actually really valued cleanliness. Many different cultures across the world, they really put an emphasis on keeping the housework maintained, right? Keeping the house clean and the spaces, you know, refreshed for people. There are multiple gods I can think of. For example, the two Germanic ones, Frau Hulla and Frau Bertha, who really emphasized, you know, getting the work done and keeping a space tidy. And with that, right, that's a way to protect the house. There are many cultures where it's thought that dust or, filth is what attracts evil spirits or bothersome spirits, unclean spirits. And so when you are a hearth witch, you take that time to really cleanse that space, keep everything running, and keep the space free of that negative, icky energy that otherwise gets clogged in on all of that, gunk and stuff that just kind of gets piled up. I myself am definitely not a hearth witch. I am a domestic disaster. I will be the first to tell you. I keep things clean so that bugs don't get in, but my house will generally on a good day look like a slight tornado came through, because I'm the kind of person to take things out, think I'm going to use them again, and not put them away. So I just have a lot of items laying around. I'm not the best hearth witch because I don't really pay attention that much to all rooms of the house, right? If anything, I maybe decorate the living room, and that's kind of it. However, there are a lot of those domestic tasks that make up hearth witchery. It's not just about keeping the family fed, it's about keeping them clothed, clean, happy, right? Keeping them safe, keeping the entire house a space where they can rest. That's important. All of that goes into this. You're washing, you're weaving, you're cooking, all of it. So it's almost like hearth witchery is an umbrella that kitchen witchery can fall under. Now on the flip side, we have green witchery, which is very interesting, right? Because you don't have to have a house at all to be a green witch. You could quite literally just go, I don't know, ramble around in the woods, and there you go. Because green witchery specifically deals with things that come out of the ground, right? It's one of the 4 types of generally elemental witches. We've got those pyromancers doing the, things with fire, like candles and such. We've got the storm witches, which are very much kind of that more air-based, right? All that wind and thunder. And we've got our water witches, which can be, sea witches, lake witches, bog witches, swamp witches, anyone that's dealing with those moist environments. Now, green witchery specifically, again, as things pop out of the ground, that's what they're looking for. And not just edible things, right? But also stones, poisonous plants. If they like to do hexing, maybe they have some nightshade, maybe they have some poisonous mushrooms. They also, have a very strong attachment to gardening, maybe. They really like gardening, not necessarily for food, but for all these different kinds of plants. Maybe certain flowers have certain intentions that guard the house. Maybe they have house plants in little pots that act as wards. They see plants not just as things to consume, but as actual entities that you can engage with, right? There's a very heavy level of animism in green witchery, and this is this idea especially that I personally subscribe to, which is that every plant, tree, it has its own spirit. It has its own essence and its own identity. And if you want to get its help, you kind of have to be nice and ask it so, right? So for instance, I have my pine tree outside. I like to throw it kitchen scraps and ask it to help us out, keep the house safe in return. Kind of the way, I don't know, if you had a Rottweiler, you might take care of it. No guard dog is going to do very well if you don't feed it or pay attention to it. And of course, the gods that are going to show up for green witches who are specifically focusing on that kind of green, outdoor, wild, nature, woodsy type are the wild gods. We got ones like Hearn, we got ones like Kerninos, we got ones like Veles, and all of these are very tricky, wild gods, as the name would imply. Gods of death in the underworld, gods of the hunt, gods of vegetation, all these different kinds of things. They pop up a lot in green witchery because that's quite literally their domain. The forest, the wild things, all of that kind of stuff. And they're also definitely just the people who are going to be willing to use nature for all reasons, right? They also a lot of things like crystals that they can use, stones that are very grounding and centering. They are willing to use nature in all its capacities, not just specific ones. But here is where that Venn diagram really comes in strong, right? Because as you can see, what does a kitchen witch use most? Plants, veggies, fruits, herbs, spices, but specifically ones that you can eat. Unlike a hearth witch that is focused on the whole house, the kitchen witch really focuses their magic and their powers specifically into the food that they make for their loved ones. So, as I said, I'm a domestic disaster, but I can cook a damn good meal, and that's what I do. Even if I'm not the best at putting things away, or, I get a little bit of dirt on my table while I'm cooking and stuff, and make a bit of chaos there, the fact is, my kitchen is my workspace. That's where I can put a lot of my love for plants into a more practical function. And it's very much combining these two qualities, right, of Hearth and Green Witchery, which is that sacred fire, because obviously the stove is going to be our biggest tool here. That's where we put our cauldron and get to work, but also in that animist perspective of the Green Witches. All of the herbs and spices that we use, that we grow, those are little plant allies. They're very good buddies. And on top of that, I, as a kitchen witch, of course I love plants. I love plants, and I love, trees and flowers and all this thing. But if I'm gonna go out of my way to nurture a plant to grow, I want it to be something that is practically useful, right? Something that I can use not just in spell work, but in everyday casual living. So yeah, I have plants that are growing in my garden, but none of them don't have a culinary purpose, right? There's the chamomile flowers that you make into delicious teas or add to baked goods. Lavender flowers. There are rosemary and sage and basil and parsley and all of these other herbs that are required for making a dish actually taste like something. I understand a lot of people like to garden just to have pretty flowers in their yard, and of course, these flowers can make beautiful things in Green Witchery, whether it's wards, whether it's certain materials like wands, all kinds of stuff. But for me as a kitchen witch, I want to, as they say, have the fruits of my labor. I want to really be able to give to this plant and have it give back to me in that kind of cyclical relationship. And of course, while green witches can have all kinds of herbs and stuff as well and, focus on those things, they might not focus on it as much as a kitchen witch that's also not only making food, but very likely also crossing into medicine as well. So this is another place where green and hearth collide. It's not just about food, but you can make tinctures, salves, ointments. You can make all these different kinds of things that also utilize your herbalist kind of know-how while also keeping your family cared for in more ways than just food. Because remember, not all herbalists are the best cooks, and not all hearth witches are really interested in doing any of that kind of more medical work either. You may also find that kitchen witches, when it comes to animals, right, like green witches, certainly they love animals and they have, pets and things, but kitchen witches you might find also having pets that, once again, aren't without some kind of extra benefit, like, say, chickens or goats that can provide milk, that can provide meat and eggs. It is what it is. So if we look at this Venn diagram one more time, I tell you right now, here's the thing. You don't have to just pick a label. You don't have to just kind of box yourself, oh, well, I'm a hearth witch that kind of likes plants, or oh, I'm a green witch, but obviously I do have a house and I need to clean it. Nope. You can absolutely blend these up and take what you like and leave what you don't, right? Maybe you don't like gardening. You can still be a kitchen witch, you just go get your stuff from the store and focus more on that hearth side. Maybe you don't really care about domestic stuff, but you love plants and you love playing around in the dirt. You could still be a kitchen witch, but probably your focus is going to be more towards that green side. And even then, you don't have to pick and choose even just one path either. I'm a kitchen witch, but I live in the ocean state, so I have easy access to ocean water, to seashells, to stones from the beach, even little fun things like seashells. Why would I not engage in a little bit of this too wherever necessary, or kind of balance those energies? And genuinely, truly, I do think that everybody who has, culinary experience and needs to eat would probably do well to learn a little bit about kitchen witchery. Not only just because it's practical and it's useful and it's a great way to get a little bit of magic in, especially, if you're busy, right? Instead of sitting down for a big old ceremonial magic ritual, you can just bless your food while you're already spending the time to cook it, but it's also stealthier, right? It may be very easy to get your broom closet witch cover blown if you're sitting here with a bunch of plants that don't have any practical use, or a bunch of ocean stuff, or a big altar full of things. Kitchen witchery, literally nobody will notice. People, as it is, don't realize they're practicing kitchen magic when they say they're cooking with love, right? So if you're in the broom closet in any sense, and you can't really get into straight green witchery yet, kitchen witchery still represents that wonderful kind of balance where you can hide it and just pretend you're only cooking, but still work with those plants, that animism, and still kind of take care of that household need too, right? And you could absolutely, say, combine kitchen and sea witchery if you were someone who really likes seafood. All of these things, as I'm saying, they overlap, they connect. You don't have to be strictly one or strictly the other. And you don't have to feel like you can't take a couple tips and tools from one and incorporate it into a much broader path. Remember that titles are really just helpful for other people to get a general sense of what you do. They are not meant to confine you or to limit you in any way. They're just an easy way for people to say, oh, if I do witchcraft with this person, they're most likely going to center on this rather than doing any other kind of stuff, right? If someone says they're a techno witch, you're going to assume that they probably like technology, even though they probably do also have some other skills in green or fire or storm witchery. As always, your path is yours, so I do hope you have a great time kind of working it out, and that this is helpful in figuring out where exactly you fall. And with that said, next time we are going to have some kitchen demos, so stay tuned. See ya!